Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And several weeks after almost every country in Europe offered visa-free access for Ukrainian refugees, the UK government has decided to go completely the other way and threaten prison for anyone trying to flee to Britain. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, fairly soon after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, several European countries said that they would welcome refugees and removed all potential barriers to doing so. Shortly after that, the EU formalised the offer for the entire bloc. This has extended beyond the EU as well. The only countries who have not offered visa-free entry for Ukrainians fleeing the horrors of war in their land are Belarus, Turkey, which is not technically wholly within Europe, and the UK, and that's it. The only countries in Europe who have not joined this scheme, whether from inside the EU or not, are those two countries who basically, let's be honest, are aligning their politics more with Russia than Europe. And the UK is one of those two. When you consider our attitude towards Europe with Brexit and the fact that our government are bending over backwards to let dodgy Russian money escape from the country while we say, of course we'll apply sanctions at some point in the future, you cannot reasonably join any conclusion other than the UK is not robustly opposing Putin over this crisis. In fact, as a bit of a laugh, Putin actually said, and it was the Daily Mail that parroted this on their front page, Putin reckons that Boris Johnson is the most anti-Russian leader in Europe. Dear me. I won't go as far as to say that we have aligned with Russia in the same way as Belarus, though, because we are providing genuinely useful military support to Ukraine. The NATO side of things is fine. I've not heard any reasonable objections to that. Turkey, as I say, is not entirely within Europe, but Turkey's applied some meaningful sanctions on Russia itself. But the Tory government's behaviour towards refugees has got nothing to do with right-wing doctrine. It is entirely evil. There are like three actions that all other Western powers are taking. The first is military aid. Like I say, the UK is doing its part there. As far as I know, absolutely fine, can't criticise it. The second is applying sanctions. Well, we're not pulling our weight here. In fact, so blatantly we are undermining the efforts of other Western powers. All branches of the US government have expressed public anger at our behaviour. And when Biden met Johnson for the NATO meeting, Boris Johnson's face was a picture. He was clearly not enjoying what Biden had to say to him. European powers have been more diplomatic, but they are nonetheless leaving our Prime Minister out of decision making, as it couldn't be more obvious that he is a Putin agent if we walked around with an I Love Putin badge on our jackets. But the third is humanitarian aid. This is something that should not even be political. It cuts across the usual political divide in the UK. Commentators on both the left and the right wing of politics in this country are saying that we should be accepting refugees from Ukraine. I have seen some very far-right commentators in this country actually deploring our government's attitude towards refugees, actually calling it inhumane. The only argument between the two sides on this one is why it's apparently fine to accept refugees from Ukraine, but not Syria. But on the issue of helping Ukrainians, both the left and the right are unequivocal that we should be welcoming them. The government refused. But they said if people want to look after them, they can take them into their own homes. It's almost like they dared the British public. But then 150,000 people said, all right, then send them our way. Send us the refugees and we'll house them. No, said the government. Find your own refugees. We're not going to help. The act of a petulant child, not of a government of one of the wealthiest nations in the world. And just as I was getting ready to record this, another story breaking in the BBC, how a child of 4, a Ukrainian refugee of 4, who's got family, I think in Stockport, but in somewhere in the north of England. And the UK government aren't letting him in. Why? Your passport's a few weeks out of date. So his passport went out of date during the invasion. Yeah, it's 4 years old. Yeah, but rules and all that. Do you think he's a Russian spy, this 4-year-old? And the real insult is the government have the nerve to say they're leading the world on humanitarian help for Ukraine and that they are showing unparalleled compassion. They don't even have the basic level of honesty to say, look, we don't like foreigners. So the only way they're getting here is by completing the ultimate Krypton factor challenge. And even then, we might have a nasty surprise from at the end of it. You know, it becomes increasingly embarrassing to be British. I know that this policy is not in line with what the British public want. It's not even in line with what the, well, majority of Conservative voters want. You know, we are tolerating it rather than supporting it. That makes it worse in many ways. In an oft-used phrase, just when you think these Tories couldn't sink any lower, they break out a new consignment of shovels and get digging again. On Tuesday, MPs were voting on the amendments that the House of Lords had made to the Nationalities and Borders Bill. I talked about one amendment yesterday. This is another. One of the several horrendous pieces of legislation being rammed through Parliament by the Home Office. The amendments were designed to remove the clauses that would have either broken international law or were unworkable, or just to tame the more immoral provisions that nowhere near a majority of Britons would ever support. One by one, Tory MPs voted against the amendments, voting for hateful legislation that will ruin our reputation abroad for a very long time, and in particularly bad taste at just the time when we have support for at least one group of refugees across the political spectrum. But it's worse still. A report shows that the government are refusing to publish the number of applications to use their visa scheme for Ukrainians. It is supposed that this is because the number will be embarrassingly low on account of how difficult it is to get through this system. This is because the government has deliberately raised barriers to entry. Raised them. It's not just maintained high barriers to entry. Raised them. It's like putting a welcome mat in front of a tangle of razor wire over a pathway of landmines, with the odd, ravenous wolf wandering around the other side should you make it through. So despite the government saying that it is fine accepting refugees as long as people in the country agree to host them, and despite 150,000 people saying they agree to host them, we can't get any actual numbers on how many people have applied or how many people have been helped by this scheme. So not only are the government making it incredibly difficult for Ukrainians to apply, they're also making it incredibly difficult for British residents to do their part as well. It turned out in this report, the system only accepts PDFs for upload. So for your document, so straight away, these people, they've fled their homes from war, it's bombs, and are currently in limbo somewhere in Europe, not only need to have brought certain documents from their bombed out homes, but they need to have access to a machine that can scan them and convert them into PDF. The government have made it as difficult as possible to help people here. It's abhorrent. And going back to those votes on the Nationality and Borders Bill I mentioned, one of the features of the proposed new law that Tory MPs voted to keep on Tuesday when the Lord said, no, you don't want this, was that these Ukrainians, by trying to get to Britain without this impossible process being completed, could be imprisoned for up to 4 years. They would also have their asylum claims automatically refused. This would be one of the clauses that, like I said, would be in breach of international law. Never mind that now. It would go beyond just immoral. This is utterly evil. Everywhere in Western and Central Europe, and most of Eastern Europe as well, are welcoming refugees. They're not even bothering to ask just yet if you've got your documents in order. Your house is in ruins. Of course, you may not have your documents. Putin's bombed their houses, for goodness sake. But look at the list of what we are requiring of the same people being welcomed by countries as far away as Iceland. First, you have to apply for a visa using a digital system. So you need some IT literacy and access to a computer when your home is basically rubble. Second, you need to have quite a lot of documents that you may not have had the time or inclination to gather before your home was turned into smoking ruins. Third, you need to go along to this computer with an internet connection, a scanner, and a subscription to Adobe, because although you may be able to read PDFs for free, you need to create them or to edit them, you need a subscription. And fourth, you need to be in direct contact with someone resident in the UK who has agreed to act as a host for you. Oh, and also you have a considerable wait of several weeks before any decision is likely to be made. And that is assuming you don't get loads of delays because, oh, sorry, your scanned documents seem to be, they were rotated by 1.5 degrees too much. Could you do it again, please? Finally, if you do try and do any of this anywhere near Britain, the government are trying to create a law that would see their arses thrown in prison and then immediately deported with their application automatically declined without consideration, completely in breach of not only normal morality, but international law. Theresa May once said that people see the Conservatives as the nasty party. Can you possibly imagine why? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.